A former vice president of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, has this week been raising questions over the 17.5 trillion naira spent on pipeline security by the Tinubu government, stating that it was more than the 12 years of subsidy put together. Atiku accused President Tinubu of robbing Nigerians to pay his cronies. In a statement by his media office, Atiku said reports of the reported expenditure by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited in just 12 months on securing fuel pipelines and others stood as one of the most brazen financial scandals in Nigeria's history. The former vice president insisted that this development was not a hallmark of governance, but grand larceny dressed as public expenditure. While convener Niger Delta Progressive Alliance Nse Victor Udoh joins us at this point to discuss NNPC's spending on pipeline surveillance and its importance to stabilizing Nigeria's economy. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here this afternoon.
Well, first of all, let's start with your thoughts on what Atiku Abubakar said. Do you in any way agree with him?
First and foremost, I think it will be clear if we make it better for Nigerians to see that there's a difference between energy security and pipeline surveillance. Energy security is the sum where this 17 trillion is being mentioned. And energy security, as we all know it, is the sum total of all the expenditure in the process of getting oil and gas processed, whether for export purpose or for domestic refining and consumption. In the report where this statement emanated from, energy security costs Nigeria 17 point something trillion. But within that report, you will also find that under recovery, which is the balancing between the landing costs and the regulated price of selling within the country. And that alone took 8 point something trillion. It is therefore elusive or misrepresenting fact for anyone to have think or make a statement that the whole 17 point something trillion was the money spent on pipeline surveillance. Pipeline surveillance is just one unit of all the things involved in energy security, from downstream to midstream to upstream. All the expenditure incurred. And don't forget that there were carryovers from the year before for which this sum is said to have been spent. That is the first thing we have to clear, the difference between energy security and pipeline surveillance, ES and PS. And I will always love to talk about pipeline surveillance in the Niger Delta, which is one of the most functional thoughts that was produced out of the box. Because by our constitution, the armed forces are supposed to protect the critical national infrastructure of the Federal Republic. When it was not working as expected, the civil defense was created with the sole mandate of protecting critical national infrastructure. And it was still not getting the result required. And then they said private companies should participate in the protection of pipeline within the Niger Delta region. A, B, or C. This thinking outside the box of bringing private companies that has resulted in large-scale inclusivity that is evidence in the output, stability, reduction, and zero, in some cases, zero infraction in vandalism has worked. And to the degree that we all know within the region, that pipeline surveillance has suddenly metamorphosed to what would have been said like the child that was waited for, the Messiah that was waited for, to serve between the people and the government, build trust, guarantee stability, and foster economic progress for the nation. In not saying much, I will want us to understand that in every society there are peculiarities, and that is why structurally implementable strategies must be evolved. And pipeline surveillance in the Niger Delta has proven herself to be a workable, structural, implementable strategy in guaranteeing the reduction of incidences, number one, the inclusivity of the people, which was the major bent of the agitation from the beginning, and lastly, to stabilize and give predictability to the Nigerian oil and gas sector in the Niger Delta.
How do you assess the expected return on investment for this 17.9 trillion naira worth of surveillance spending compared to other potential investments in the region, in the Niger Delta, such as regional infrastructure, education, or environmental remediation?
I am not holding brief for NNPC, but I saw also in the same documents that 5.4, if I'm not mistaken, trillion was the profit for the year. About 64% on year-on-year profit margin in analyzing 2023-2024. And if that means profit margin is positive. Then I will now go back to the region. My dear sisters and viewers across the world, pipeline surveillance in the Niger Delta is not about boots on the ground alone. It's about the level of inclusivity of the people of the Niger Delta into the community-based surveillance job that has created large-scale employment of over 60,000 persons, has empowered people, has built hospitals, has given startup pack to women, has built health facilities, has taken care of school, giving large-scale scholarship. Pipeline surveillance in the Niger Delta is beyond the just protection of pipes and making sure that people do not tamper with this pipe. It is an expanded engagement of the Niger Delta people that has done three things. Number one, has created a social thrust between the Niger Delta people and the government. And then, number two, it has helped us take care of our environment. How do I mean? I mean that when there are no incidences, when there are no fire, what we refer to as illegal refinery in the large scale, the environment is better protected. In remediating the environment or recovering the environment, as it stands now, I think in the last 1 or 2 years, it can be categorically said that from kilometer 1 to kilometer 16 is an area that was affected about 10, 15 years ago. But there are no clear-cut issues of new environmental degradation now. What is going on now in the Niger Delta is environmental recovery, on one hand. Then secondly, the people now feel better secured with not being excluded. Then lastly, no matter how you look at issues and you try to control people without economic benefit, it becomes very difficult. The creation of jobs and empowerment through startup pack that the pipeline surveillance bring to the table, it's what keeps the region stable and guarantees that the issue of employment, the issue of environmental remediation, and other variables will be addressed. I make it very clear to anyone who cares to hear that the stability in the Niger Delta today, the stability in the oil output of Nigeria today, the ability to produce 1.8 million barrels as recorded in November, is not a product of many boots on ground, but a product of more men on the table. When I say more men on the table, is the larger number of communities, stakeholders, and youth and other actors that have been brought on the table to see the Nigerian God's blessed resources of oil and gas as our own and participate in the benefit thereof.
No, thank you so much, for that. But then I'm wondering, what about reports, allegedly that high-profile individuals, including security officials, are involved in oil theft in Nigeria? Why is it so difficult to investigate, apprehend, and prosecute those that are allegedly involved in this criminal act instead of, just bringing out huge sums of money to protect? Why not also deter as well?
The Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has the duty to suppress any form of coercion. And the other persons of police and civil defense has the duty to arrest and prosecute those involved in any form of criminality, not just in the tampering with critical national asset of oil and gas. But I am excited to tell you here that at a stakeholders meeting in Bayelsa last month, it was clearly reported that for 3 months, there have been no issue of human tampering with pipe that could create vandalism or disruption. It therefore means that pipeline surveillance is doing what is referred to as preventive approach to the issue of crimes in the Niger Delta. I will not say that those that were hitherto before today arrested for vandalism or crude oil theft should not be prosecuted. But I can tell you on good authority as a critical stakeholder that in the 1 year or few months that had gone, that there have been no incidences. So if the monies that are invested to protect pipelines through pipeline surveillance had led to preventive incidences, I think it's a better option than just prosecuting. But please, let us not forget that 17-point-something trillion is the sum total of Nigerian energy security investment from the downstream to midstream to upstream. It is not what he's being paid for pipeline surveillance. And let us not forget that under recovery that takes 8-point-something is the balancing between what the landing cost is and what the regulated price of government selling is.
Well, critics argue that such a large, non-productive expenditure contributes to Nigeria's high profile and, of course, our recurrent costs. How do we reconcile this need for a huge security spending with the national goal of achieving long-term fiscal stability and reducing the debt to GDP ratio?
When we said high expenditure without output, I think it is not very correct, because the stability in the Niger Delta through pipeline surveillance, the stability and predictability of the oil flow has done 3 things. Number 1, a budget can be prepared with a clear picture of what the quantity will be to be sold. Number 2, foreign direct investments that are coming in as a consequence of stability in the region cannot be undermined. Then you also talk about the economic benefit to the Nigerian state itself. The stability in the availability of oil for refining locally and for export purpose guarantees, especially for the export purpose, guarantees a better balance of trade for Nigeria that will produce a better stable forex. The stability in the forex recently is not a major abracadabra or any too much of rocket science. It is as a consequence of the predictability, stability, and large output of oil and gas that has improved our balance of trade, that has enhanced our forex and created stability. Foreign direct investment are coming in large sum. The figures I may not be able to tell you here because of the limited time we have. Then lastly, in the Niger Delta itself, today the Niger Delta seems to be very stable, quiet. It's because of the employment. It's because people are being carried along. It's because people feel the sense of belonging. It's because the CSR, the corporate social responsibilities, is working. It's because people are no longer feeling intimidated because there are lesser boots on ground.
Well, and Sir Victor
So
Udoh.
the investment in securing pipeline through pipeline surveillance in Nigeria benefits the Nigerian state economically more than we can imagine, benefits the Niger Delta people greatly to the level that the environment are not just being tampered with, but the people are empowered. And very importantly, whenever we're able to find a bearing to a solution that had lingered for so long, we should be on that line. Every nation has its unique approach to situations, and this approach of pipeline surveillance have worked, and the measurability of the indices of its output in the Niger Delta is evident to even people who do not subscribe to what we are saying or what we are enjoying in the Niger Delta today.
Well, convener Niger Delta Progressive Alliance,
Thank you for having me.
and Sir Victor Udoh, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.